Hello and welcome back, Cozy Club. Now, listen, Disney has some pretty dark villains, whether it's Mother Gothel, the manipulative, codependent mother, locking away Rapunzel in a tower for her own selfish gain. You have Scar, who was willing to kill his own brother pretty much in front of his nephew, and Mufasa right in front of his son. And then you have someone like Claude Frollo. In the opening credits of the film, he kills Quasimodo's mother, is willing to throw a deformed baby down a well, wants to burn down the entire city for pretty much no motive outside of lust and just blind ambition. This guy, he's absolutely crazy. And if you really look into the villains, it pretty much doesn't come close that Claude Frollo is easily one of the darkest. So before we start today's video, I want to do something a little bit different. Down below, I want you to tell me who you think the darkest Disney villain is and why. And I really think it's got to be Frollo, but go ahead, make your case. All right, Cozy Club, as always, it is a beautiful day for some DSA. And in today's video, we're going to cover the newest villain to Disney Sorcerer's Arena, Frollo. Now, we're going to talk about how you get him, what abilities he has, what teams and characters does he work well with, and my general first impressions about Claude Frollo. Now, we're going to be testing him today on stream, really testing him between a lot of different teams and finding the maximum use for him. Claude Frollo fits perfectly into the villain teams that are already out there, and with his stats and his abilities that all are very useful, he's going to be a perfect addition to any villain or kingdom squad. Now, let's go ahead. I want to jump in and take a look at his stats because they're absolutely insane. He's great at T7, but at T8, he's got some insane speed, critical damage, and crit chance stats. Quickly taking a look at Claude Frollo's stats, you've got his offense at 2,382. Perfect to throw an offense stone on there if you want some extra damage. Now, Cozy Club, let me tell you, his ability damage is really high. So his offense stat mixed with his ability damage and Ursula lead is going to have Claude hitting some insane numbers. His defense is at 613. Health is at 18,319. So a little bit on the squishy side with not a lot of ways to protect himself, but that's okay. You're going to kind of see the teams that he fits well in. You've got his crit chance at 19%, crit power at a whopping 197%, speed at a very fast 135, potency at a high 31%, and tenacity at 26%. So that's going to be his T8 stats. And let's go ahead and see the abilities that marry perfectly with Mr. Frollo. And now, how do you unlock this 6-foot Prime Minister of Justice? Well, I'll tell you, Cozy Club, you're going to go ahead and complete the Hunchback of Notre Dame's Tower, unlocking Quasimodo and Esmeralda. Now, right now, no rush to unlock this character. I do have a little bit of beef that they're requiring T8 characters. That's such a heavy investment. And instead of just upping the gear gate, I wish they did something else to unlock this guide, because definitely want to see more creativity into unlocking these characters. But on the good side, if you're going to be looking for a positive, both Quasimodo and Esmeralda are proven to be very solid characters, so it's not the worst thing to invest your gear in them. But let's go ahead and take a look at all of his abilities. Why do you want to unlock this beast of a character in the first place? Starting off with his basic attack. He's going to go ahead and call a non-summon villain teammate that is able to attack with the highest offense. In addition, he'll also call either 2 of his archers or Quasimodo to assist in that attack, and if no teammate is available, he is going to go ahead and deal 3,500 damage to the target opponent and inflict continuous damage, dealing up to 2,679 damage over 2 turns. So his basic is a lot like Belle's, but with more direction. He's going to be calling the villain with the highest offense stat. Again, a lot like Belle, but instead, you're calling most of the time people like Hades, which is the perfect person to call with the teams that Frollo falls into. But we'll get to that a little bit later. Moving on to his special A ability, Smite the Wicked. This thing is in competition with Duke Kaboom on one of the slower animations in the game, but you gotta love what the art team put into it here. You're gonna be dealing some massive damage, 8,000 damage to the target opponent. You're going to inflict silence for 1 turn. You're going to flip 2 helpful effects into continuous damage, a little bit like Quasimodo. And that continuous damage is going to hit some monster numbers at 6,878 damage. In addition, if this ability does defeat an opponent, you're going to spread that continuous damage from the defeated target to adjacent opponents. And then lastly, with his passive and with Fury, which we'll get to in a second, you're going to be dealing extra 30% bonus damage. The attack is going to be unavoidable, and you'll also consume that Fury. So this move at 6-star is hitting over 40,000 damage when he's under Hellfire. It can do some insane things on the battlefield. You just want to make sure you use it right. Now, first of all, you want to make sure you can use this on a tank that has taunt or on any characters that have some buffs out on the field. Now, first of all you're not going to get that continuous damage if they don't have buffs, and you're really going to want to lay that on the enemy. Now, first of all, it's going to hit some massive damage to begin with. But in addition, it's also going to lay some insane continuous damage bombs on. So not only are you hitting that 8,000 damage number, but in addition, you're going to be laying on some continuous damage that does an additional almost 7,000 damage for a total of 15,000 damage on the first turn of the attack. This is an absolute time bomb of an attack that can silence the enemy and really lay a devastating hit. Now, obviously, this marries perfectly with his leadership with Hades and with Demona, laying some strong continuous damages on the field, and you don't always want to use this turn 1. I know it's got silence, it's got a very high damage threshold, but you want to make sure they have helpful effects on the field to get the best maximum usage out of this ability. So for Special B, you've got the Judge's Commands, and this is mainly going to be used to summon Frollo's archers, but if you already have archers or there's these other conditions on the field, this is going to do some different things. Now, first of all, if there are other archer teammates on the field, you're going to go ahead and perform about 3,000 damage to all opponents 2 times, kind of looking like Namari in raining down the arrows. If you do have Fury, all the archers on the board already are going to go ahead and assist. And then lastly, if there's nothing on the board, of course, you're going to summon 2 to 3 archers on the board. Now, this is going to marry perfectly with some teams that we're going to go ahead and place Frollo on, but a very strong ability. And these archers actually are the first of their kind. They have their own separate abilities, can deal some great damage and have more than use on the battlefield, but we'll get to that here in a second. Let's go ahead and check out those archers. They're going to go ahead and have 10,000, almost 11,000 health. They'll have 306 defense, and they'll have the following abilities. Now, first of all, they've got their basic, just going to deal some decent damage, dealing a little bit more if continuous damage is on the field. You'll pay for that. They'll be dealing up to 1,500 damage to target opponents over 3 times with a 30% chance to inflict continuous damage. Now, Special A and Special B are going to be the main attacks you want to use with them while they are alive, because you want to lay debuffs and continuous damage on the enemies to work well with Frollo's passive. Now, Special B, you think he's ugly now, you've got this great tomato, you're going to go in and throw the tomato on the enemy and lay down tenacity down, which actually marries perfect with the villains and with Claude Frollo to go ahead and put the continuous damage out on the field, making it a little bit easier. You want to throw this on characters like Beast and Baymax and Elsa, those characters with high tenacity. Go ahead, throw the tomato, throw it on the raid boss to make your continuous damage stick a little bit easier. Now, of course, there's one last huge use for these characters, but we're going to get to that as soon as we get to the team section of it. But these archers are actually some of the best summons in the game and can actually do some very solid damage, dealing 3,000 damage over and over, and you can't just flat out ignore them on the battlefield. It's time to talk about what Frollo is known best for, and that is Hellfire. That is all of the damnation for Paris that he has, and it is all in his passive ability. Now, he's going to have a mechanic that is going to be stacking up a new buff that is selfishly just for Frollo, and that is going to be Fury. Now, looking at his passive, Frollo is going to gain 1 stack of Fury anytime he or a villain kingdom ally inflicts a harmful effect. That's including his own archers, which both can put out continuous damage and tenacity down. He'll also get Fury if a teammate defeats an opponent, or if any Esmeralda on their side or your side uses any ability, or if Esmeralda falls below 60% health for the first time. So there's a lot of different ways that Claude Frollo is going to get Fury and unleash hell on his opponents. Now, anytime Frollo does get to 10 Fury, which does happen more often than you think, with all those harmful effects, all the enemies dying on the field, a lot of ways that he can go ahead and get to 10. And once that happens, he can go ahead, he can cleanse sleep, he can cleanse stun, and really make sure he's ready for a devastating blow. Now, on top of that, he's going to gain 20% speed turn meter, a guaranteed crit, which you can get up to a max of 3, and the cherry on top, 2 magic or lower the cooldown of his 2 insane specials by 2, setting him up again to go ahead and do that devastating special A or rain down the arrows if you have your archers. Altogether, very strong passive. Takes a little bit time for him to build this up, and once we start having 7-star Frollos, I think we're going to see this even more. But it's capable of dealing some of the most damage in the game for a single target attack, which is perfectly fit for Mr. Frollo. Let's go ahead and let's look at his leadership ability. We're always talking about wanting to see more leaderships within DSA, and Frollo is going to come with a brand new unique ability. Now, for the most part, this is probably going to be used in Club Conquest. We might be able to see some use for this in the future, and it's very strong, but it is lacking speed, which you guys know is a big detriment to the villain faction. Now, let's go ahead and take a look. Purge the World, his leadership is going to be all about continuous damage. All opponents affected by continuous damage are going to receive the following: -7 defense, -7 tenacity, and -5 offense per continuous damage up to a stack of 5. So 25% offense, and then you've got yourself both 35% defense and 35% tenacity negative on the opponent. Now, this is really great. It works awesome in Club Conquest. I got to use it a little bit. Again, it's kind of hard to keep on stacking these within live PvP. Shere Khan can lay out a bunch at once. You can do some nice things with it, but because of the lack of speed, it just doesn't weigh out the other leaderships that you can do, especially Ursula. Claude Frollo really teams up perfectly with Ursula, and there's not really a reason at this moment to use this leadership ability, but there's a lot of great theory crafting that we could do. I know a lot of you guys out there have all these ideas. You can put Demona, you can put all these strong characters that lay out heavy continuous damage to get some very unique things happening, shutting down some of the stronger opponents on the battlefield. But in my testing in live PvP at the moment, it's not the most successful leadership within the game. Now, the cherry on top of all this is when any of these opponents with continuous damages are defeated, everyone on your team is going to gain magic. So that is a pretty nice niche to all of this, and I think it's got a chance again in some other game modes. But in live PvP, go ahead and stick with those main leadership abilities. And that is going to be his stats, his abilities, a little bit of the things that you need to know about how Frollo works. Now, let's go ahead and talk about some tips and tricks and where I think Frollo is going to fit the best. Now, with all of my testing, I put him with a lot of kingdom testing. I put him with a lot of different teams. And my favorite team by far is going to be what I like to call the Suicide Squad. Now, this is going to involve the villains. It's a knockoff the DC movie, but let me go into it with a little bit more detail. So the Suicide Squad, if you will, actually doesn't even use Frollo all that much. He is there to summon those archers turn 1 with his lightning fast speed. And as you guys know, combine that with Ursula and her eels, and combine that with Hades in Pain and Panic, you're gonna have a lot of villain teammates on the battlefield. And as you guys know, as those villain teammates die, Pain and Panic are gonna stick out that empowered, having Hades lay out the bombs over and over, gonna trigger those continuous damages that are gonna be laid out by Claude Frollo, by Ursula, and by his archers, and you're gonna keep on nuking the opponent over and over. This thing came to me way late at night, and it's an absolutely devastating team that can take out even the top meta of teams that you're facing out there. Now, this team is a hit you right in the mouth, perfect fit to combined with Frollo. It goes so quickly with Frollo's speed. You can get all these archers, all of the eels, and then go ahead, throw in someone like Yokai, pop up those micro bots, and then bam, you're killing off your own teammates, and you're gonna allow Hades to go ahead and combust on the enemy. This is by a large amount my favorite team, but some other great teammates that Frollo fits under is obviously Shan Yu and the Kingdom Villains. Put him with Sheriff of Nottingham, with Namari, with Mother Gothel. He has a great pair up there, or he can pair it very nicely with Esmeralda and Quasimodo. He does have a little bit of synergy with Quasi, able to call him to attack and all those continuous damages that Quasi lays out. And Esmeralda is going to charge up that Fury even a little bit faster and add a very nice cleanse option to the entire villain team. Do I recommend you go full out and try to get him? Well, if you've got the villains unlocked and you already have a great Pain and Panic in Hades, go ahead, make the farm and go after Quasi and Esmeralda to start unlocking Mr. Frollo. But altogether, these are some great people to pair him up with, the best team to pair him up with. And then definitely you want to go ahead and put a speedstone on him, or you can capitalize on that high crit damage and put a crit damage stone to go ahead and excel that Hellfire that's already spitting out some of the highest damage within the game. If there are buffs on the field, you can open up with that huge hitting silence attack, or if you want to go ahead and bomb the enemy as soon as possible and rain true Hellfire on them, go ahead, call those archers up, and then have Yokai summon those microbots, get all the summons on the field, and start having Hades do his thing. And Cozy Club, that is going to be the first looks, the first impressions, and pretty much the spotlight on Mr. Claude Frollo, or Frollo as all of us know him by. If you guys want to see more testing with Frollo, feel free to stop on by the Twitch channel, my friends. I'm going to be testing him a ton today and a ton all week. You guys know I love the villain faction, so to get not only a new villain, but to get a new kingdom villain to team up with Namari is going to have some great combinations out there, and I'm super excited to continue the theory crafting. My friends, we've got a lot of great videos for you guys coming out soon. If you haven't already, it's absolutely free to join the Cozy Club, so go ahead, click that red subscribe button, like today's video if you enjoyed what you saw and you want more of these in-depth guides. And my friends, as always, stay cozy.